The scripture reading this morning comes not from the whole book of Genesis. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I didn't fill it in, did I? If you're reading Genesis, you're probably shaking your boots. Is he going to read the whole book of Genesis? Genesis chapter 12, the first 3 verses. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
You know, we're going through the Bible in a little different way this year. It's a story. It's two stories, the story of God and the story of our stories, how they fit into God's story. And we're looking for those intersections along the road as we go. How do the things that happen to me in my life throughout the week, how do those things fit into God's overall plan? And you'll hopefully see as we go along here that the characters in the Bibles were thinking just the same thing. Abraham must have been thinking that one, and when he went through his life. How is what God promised going to happen? I don't see how that's going to happen. And so, as we're going through the story here over the next several weeks, you'll begin to see how your story intersects with God's story. God made a promise to Abraham. 4 promises that he made. I will make you into a great nation to bless you. Number 2, I will make your name great. You will bless others. Number 3, I will cause you to bless. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And finally, I will bless the world through you. Blessings come from those who trust in God's providence. Blessings come from those who trust in God's ability to provide for the needs of His people. Genesis 12:6, the Canaanites were then in the land, but the Lord said to Abraham, "I will give this land to your offspring." God can claim the property. God can claim the territory in which you live for Himself, regardless of what possessions or who possesses it now. Giants can be in the land. And what are the giants of your life? God can take those giants and He can reduce them to rubble. This includes the territory of your soul as well. God can take those difficulties, those challenges in your life that keep you from following the Lord, and He can remove them when you are faithful to Him and you are trusting in the promises of the Lord. In Genesis 13:6, it says, their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. He was talking about Abraham and his nephew Lot. And so what does Abraham do? They started to quarrel among themselves because there wasn't enough land to go around. Has that ever happened to you and your family? And what was Abram's response? You choose what land you want, Lot. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the north, I'll go to the south. If you take the very best land, that's all right. I'll take whatever's left. So Lot chose what seemed to be the most valuable land, but the Lord told Abram, well, that's what his name was at the time, I will give you and your offspring all the land forever. That was the promise of God to Abram. And as it turned out, the land that Lot chose may have been fertile, and it may have been good for growing crops, but the blessings of God were not on it. The story tells us that the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. The sin of greed for the things of this world can cause you to choose the lesser things. Abram chose God, and God gave him everything. Now, Abram wasn't a perfect character, you know that. He hesitated and he fell back, and he was a lot like you and me. But he recognized the faithfulness of God, and he endured. The second thing, blessings come to those who endure. Maybe you're in a place in your life where you feel a little bit dry. You're feeling like your soul is barren. Maybe you lost loved ones recently. By the way, this week we lost a loved one in our community, Mary Lou Carroll, went to be with the Lord on Tuesday. And we did her funeral yesterday. How many of you knew Mary Lou? I did not have the privilege of knowing her very well. I'd seen her from time to time at the nursing home. But the things that I learned this week about Mary Lou, she was an enduring person. She was a tough lady. 11 kids, 2 others that she took care of her own, washing clothes with a wringer, washing machine, baking, cooking, a faithful lady. She was one who endured. Maybe it seems as though you're alone. There are plenty of people that surround you, but you're just feeling alone. You no longer connect with people. Maybe you left your former way of life, and your new way of life is, well, your friends don't accept you anymore. They don't understand you anymore. Maybe it seems as though people around you have it all. They've got the toys, they've got the beautiful homes, they've got the land, they've got everything. But if they have not chosen to follow God in their lives, they've not chosen the best way. God will not bless that. And for some of you, it may feel so at sometimes that you're a stranger in this world. Even in your hometown. God told Abraham, know for certain your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be mistreated. Remember, if you've chosen God, you've chosen the better way. Even if you're in the midst of following that better way, those circumstances are very difficult for you, God will bless you. Thirdly, blessing come to those who wait. Genesis 15, 1 through 6 says, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram couldn't see how that could be. Reward? I'm 100 years old. How is God going to bless me through my children? His hair was like mine, white unto harvest. But there was no children. The fields were bare. And Abram said, how is that going to happen, Lord? And so he thought that God would have to bless him through his servant. And so Hagar became, in Abram's mind, Abram thought that Hagar would be the way that God would bless him. But God had other plans. God said, look up into the skies. See those stars? How many can you count them? And of course, have you ever tried to count the stars in the skies? I did once. I've done it on a couple of occasions. I get up to maybe 300 or 400, and then unbelievable. He says, God says, I will give you that many offspring. In Genesis 16, later Abram tried again to help God out. He still didn't have any children. How was God's promise going to be fulfilled without a little help from Abram? So he slept with Hagar and had a child named Ishmael. Now, do you know who Ishmael is? Ishmael is the father of the Muslims. Was the father of the Islamic nations. But this was not the way that God had chosen to bless Abram either, was it? In fact, Ishmael became the father of the Islamic people. When our difficult circumstances appear to be, well, just like a roadblock in the way, a permanent roadblock we just cannot see, how are we going to get around that? Have faith in the promises of God. Has God ever failed His people? No, He has not. As the Lord Himself said, is anything too hard for the Lord? What God promises, God delivers. patiently wait for the Lord. And finally, blessings come to those who obey. Blessings come to those who obey God. And while you were waiting, put your faith into practice. Obey. We wait for the Lord, yes, but while we're doing it, God can't steer something that's sitting there stationary. We obey. We begin to obey God. Abraham is commended by the writer to the Hebrews for his faith. Abraham's faith was an active faith. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8 says, "It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land. He went without knowing where he was going." Of course, one of the greatest, most memorable stories in the whole pages of Scripture is this story that we read about later on when Abram had the promised child, Isaac. Oh, he loved Isaac. Isaac was the child of the promise. Well, one day God came to Abraham and said, "Take your son, go to the mountain that I will show you." You know that that's Mount Moriah. "And sacrifice your son as a burnt offering to the Lord." Can you imagine doing that to your own son? Even thinking about it? I cannot. But Abram probably had seen enough of God's miracles in his life that he did that. So he took the pack, what was it, a mule I think, and put the firewood on it and 2 servants and his son Isaac and headed off to Mount Moriah. And God was asking him to sacrifice something that was so dear to him. Abraham and Sarah loved that boy. How could God kill him or ask Abraham to kill him? But in that demonstration of incredible faith in God, he takes the boy and goes to the place where God shows him. And as he has his hand, was he left-handed or right-handed? His hand raised with the knife, ready to kill his son Isaac. An angel calls out to Abraham, "Abram, Abram, yes, Lord, do not kill your son, for now I know that you have obeyed me." It was a test that God had put Abram to. And so as we go through our lives, there will be tests. There will be times when we don't understand how God could ask us to do such a thing. But have trust and obey. And God will see you through. Now, does that mean that problems won't come to us, that tragedy won't come to us, that hard things won't come to us? No. But as we're obeying God's story, which is bigger than our story, His plan will come to fruition. His plan is perfect. Do you want God's blessings today? That's not just a rhetorical question. Answer. Do you want God's blessings today? Yes. Follow Abraham's example. Trust in God. Endure while you're trusting. Wait for God's promises. But while you're waiting, go to work. Obey. And when you do these things, God's blessings will come to you. And when you do, you don't want to keep them to yourself. You're going to want to share them with the whole world as you become a blessing to other people.